Hey folks, it's Doug here from Mesh. I'm going to do another short little update video for you on version 4 of our Embodied Carbon Calculator. This has been a super popular tool to help you at the early stages of building design to determine what levels of embodied carbon your building has got. But before further ado, if you like this video and you've taken a look around our channel and like some of the others, do click the bell below subscribe button and you'll find out about the updates and new videos and webinars that we've got hitting this channel. So thank you in advance for that. So the tool, version 4, I've got the screen shared for you here, and I'm going to start at tab number 1. This is the introduction tab. It tells you, roughly speaking, how to use the tool and what the calculator is about. I'm going to update the video link down here so you've got access to this latest video from here. But fundamentally, this is just, as say, an intro sheet which takes you through the fundamental steps and talks to you about some of the tabs that I'm going to quickly cover. We've got some new ones in here, so pay attention. So the first new one actually that we've got in here, we wanted to clarify how this tool relates to the RIBA 2030 targets and the assessment for embodied carbon. I don't want to get lost in the detail here, and we've done a graphic that I've taken off of the web that shows you the different kind of embodied carbon and whole life carbon assessment method modules that you get for this. But essentially this tool focuses on the orange modules that you can see here, modules A1 to A3. And we've tweaked the tool to essentially extrapolate for the whole life carbon in a building. So we're doing the simple stuff here and selecting materials with known values for your building. And then we're extrapolating the whole life carbon of those materials to give you some sound data against which you can compare your building against the RIBA 2030 targets. And really just this tab lays out the stall here. We've also got, having taken guidance from LETI, and you'll see there's a couple of selections for different building types. You can access the full London Energy Transformation Initiative document, which has helped us kind of tweak this and improve this a bit. So I'm not going to go through all this, but fundamentally this, as I say, lays out in more detail, if you're interested, how we get to these figures and the context of the calculator. This one remains unchanged. This tab here is about operational energy, a reminder that you can't just go ahead and smash along doing a great job with embodied carbon. You've got to bear in mind the U values of the buildings as you're trying to hit more and more tighter RIBA 2030 targets. And also there's some technology, different technologies you're going to have to throw at the building as well to help improve the operational energy. So this table here is a quick kind of guideline, and we've got the different targets and the kind of U values that you should be hitting and the technologies as a guideline you should be putting into the building. So as you get to more detailed design, you're not going to be too far off the mark. Now this other tab here, really excited to be able to add this in for you guys. We want to make this a kind of a transparent tool. And before we've kind of hidden this information away, but actually we've got listed here in plain view all of the materials that go into this calculator, their global warming potential from the EPDs that information we take from one-click LCA. So this is kind of the critical kilograms of CO2 per unit volume or square meters. The units that data relates to, and then the thermal conductivity of the materials as well, just for your interest. So we've got a big long list here of 40, 50 materials. But also at the bottom now, another really great feature is you can add in your own materials here. So if you do find an EPD and can find the right data, you can put in your own material. And I know every different practice is different. You use some particularly unique materials. For a laugh, I've just put in Play-Doh here, and a value for global warming potential and thermal conductivity, and I will show you this in the drop-down menu, but you get to put in 3 unique values, and that's picked up in the rest of the calculator. So that's our new materials tab that we've got there, and you might learn something along the way by looking at some of the other data in there. Now, the embodied carbon calculator itself, it's so tempting to get carried away with the numbers here. Let's remind ourselves that we're in early stage design, and when we're getting feedback about some of the other tools available and how we could make this more useful to use, we decided to make it more visual, as well as a couple of other tweaks. So I'm going to run through some basic changes here, and I've already kind of pre-populated some of these areas, and hopefully you can pick up on the changes. So actually, one of the other big changes, before we get into that, I've actually dropped the other building types. So you can just look at one building type here. It was getting overly complicated and probably not that user-friendly to look at another building and another building on the same spreadsheet. So we've got one building type here that you can look at and analyze, and I've dropped off building types 2 and 3. So you put in your building name here. Let's just call it Doug's house. And you can then choose from the building type. And we've actually got, we used to have domestic and commercial in here. I've actually taken these headings from the LETI document that I was talking about, because some of these are domestic and some of these are commercial, but fundamentally it changes the amount of carbon in the materials to the whole life carbon that you should be looking at for the target. So this is a more accurate way of making sure you're going to be along the right kind of lines. So let's talk about my private house, and I'm going to choose, and you can choose any of these RIBA targets that you're trying to hit. And what this helps you to do by choosing a particular target is it changes your target value that you're trying to meet. And of course, if you're below that value, you've got a pretty good chance of hitting the standard as you get into detailed design. But also, as I mentioned before, it affects these U values. So we give you a helping hand here. If you choose a particularly tight RIBA standard, it gives you an indicator at an appropriate level when you've got to a U value that's going to be spot on for the operational energy of the building. So let's choose, just for an example, RIBA 2025. You can see it's for a house, it's domestic. The target's below 450 kilograms of CO2 per square meter of floor area. And funnily enough, the details that I've actually put into this spreadsheet, the roof construction, the wall construction, the floor construction, and the renewables, pretty much is bang on target here. Now, beforehand, we had loads of data. Now you can get an overview of how the different elements of your proposed design stacks up against other elements. So as part of that target, a number to most is pretty meaningless. But here are the proportions. So we've got the renewables taking up about 39%, roughly speaking, of the total. And then you've got walls and roofs, second and third, most kind of carbon intensive elements of the building. And you've got foundations and walls and doors and windows is the little purple one here. And actually, if you hover over it with your cursor, it gives you the full title and the percentage if it gets into a tiny little box. So you can see whole building immediately what contribution these various elements of the building are making. And as you populate, as you drop in your materials and your thicknesses for your elements of the constructions, in this particular case for the roof, and you put in the area over which that construction covers, again, you get immediate feedback on proportionally which of those materials has the higher level of carbon. So you can see here, I've gone for clay roof, an air tightness membrane, PIR insulation, plasterboard, and studs as part of that construction in the roof. And PIR is 61% of the carbon footprint on there. Clay roof tiles, 31%, and then these others diminishing. If we were to change PIR for a less carbon intensive material, and let's remember, the higher up you are in this list, the less carbon's involved. Say you changed it for sheep's wool insulation. Our U value has got worse, but look, the roof, the sheep's wool insulation is now a tiny, tiny fraction, and the clay roof tiles are now the biggest proportion. But we would likely have to put more sheep's wool insulation in, so we have to get within the U value again. But even so, you can immediately see the effect that changing material has. Another thing to mention here, given that we've got an air tightness membrane, we have added a few extra materials based on feedback from you guys as architects using this. Those include, we've got foam glass insulation, which is a lesser carbon intensive form of insulation. And we've put in some lime renders there and limecrete. We've also got a DPC membrane, polythene DPC membrane, and also an air tightness membrane. And what I would say, when you choose these materials, you've got to be really careful about the thicknesses you put in. These materials, as they're put in, are per cubic meter and assume a meter thickness. So an air tightness membrane is typically 0.2 of a millimeter thick. So make sure you're putting in an accurate thickness for the membrane. Pull up a data sheet for a suitable one before you get really familiar with it, and make sure those thicknesses are right. So going down, normal things really we put in the walls. We've got a brick cavity wall with PIR insulation. Immediately you can see PIR is a big chunk, but bricks and thermal concrete blocks are contributing a large amount to the embodied carbon there. You can see the walls are the heaviest hitter for the whole building of embodied carbon contribution. And we've got our internal walls with plasterboard and acoustic insulation and stuff. Again, you can see actually for the internal walls, gypsum plasterboard is the biggest contributor to carbon. We've got our windows and doors in there. In fact, I haven't filled in the square meterage here for double glazing. Let's say there is 30 meters of glazing on this particular house. As you can see immediately up here, the doors and window proportion has changed to a much greater 12%. And you get that instant feedback, and that's what's great about using some of these graphics on here that we've added in. Everything else remains the same. Nothing really changes from the previous calculator. I've got some solar PV in there, an air source heat pump, underfloor heating. If we went, for example, from air source heat pump to gas boiler, makes a fractional difference to the renewables and HVAC contribution for the whole building. And if we took out MVHR, again, we can see what difference that makes, a fractional difference really to the carbon in the building. So really quick whistle stop tour there. Got some great new graphical features, some new materials that you can look at, some more clarity on how the calculator calculates what it does. And we will be releasing this tool really shortly. So do watch this video, continue to give us your feedback, and I hope you enjoy using it. Thanks very much.